All right, welcome to another episode of Black Swan Revelations. My name is Shane, and we're doing something a little bit different today, and that is at my kitchen table, because for some reason I'm unable to log on my computer. So we're going to do this Bible study from my phone, and hopefully nobody calls me in the next half an hour or so. I don't know how long we'll go, because I'm not sure how stable my internet connection is here. If this doesn't work, then what I'm going to do is I'll probably just make a video and then upload it later. But we'll see. We'll see how far we get. I really wanted to talk about this subject. Tomorrow, Greg from Uptime Community Church will be on my channel tomorrow night. I believe it's at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And oh, it's awesome. I can actually see my comments on here. I was a little bit worried that I wouldn't be able to see comments on this phone. I'm using my phone now because I have a little bit of internet connection problems on my computer, which is where I have my normal mic, my headphones, all that kind of stuff. I was going to go outside, but my neighbors sometimes get a little chatty amongst themselves and they start yelling and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, I told you, no, you're not having a cookie. No, for the 12th time, you're not having milk. No cookies. And I'm like, seriously? I can hear you in my yard. So that's why I'm not going out into the backyard, although it'd be nice because it's kind of cool to hear the birds chirp and all that kind of stuff. But when the dogs bark and all that crazy stuff, it's not so easy to concentrate. So if you have any questions about what we're talking about this morning, feel free to leave a comment and then I can check it out. So who do we have here? We have Eric, Rock, Hen, Rock Hen, Ron. Hi, Pambolina. I'm horrible with names. I'll just say that. I think of that Saturday night live skit. What was it? There's like a teacher, and basically is A Ron in. How about a D nice? Is there a D nice? You mean Denise? Yes. So I apologize if I get your name wrong. Andrew, welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about giants today, and let me know if the audio is okay, because I'm just using my iPhone right now. So just if somebody can just say, yep, good to go, that's perfect. If not, I don't know what else to say. I'll just try and speak up. I can't use my computer right now because for some reason my computer is just getting all funky. Couldn't log into the software StreamYard, but for some reason I could do it on my phone. So here we go. Just keeping an eye on my dog too. He just jumped off the couch and now he's taking a bit of a nap. Good old Oliver. So we're going to jump into Numbers. Numbers chapter 13. If you have your King James Bible handy, that would be fantastic. And then you can read along as well. So Numbers 13. Talking about giants. Are there giants among us today? That's the topic of this video. So let's just go into, let's go to chapter 13, verse 1, and then we'll skip over to verse 32. Right, so, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Send thou men that they may search the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel. Of every tribe of their fathers shall ye send a man, every one a ruler among them. So every tribe was to send a spy. And this was done by Moses to send them out because they were just wrapping up their little tour of the wilderness for 40 years. And now they're going into the promised land. So this was probably about, I want to say this was about, how long was this? Doesn't say here how long it was, but it was not long after they left Egypt that they're going into the promised land. I forget how many months it was. But it was not 40 years at the beginning, because they sent 12 spies out to have a look at the land. And then these spies brought back a bad report. And let's just go to verse 32 here. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So this is a little bit of a different, this is not just seeing a bunch of professional wrestlers like Andre the Giant and that kind of stuff, guys, or Hulk Hogan, guys that are like 6'8", 7'3", that kind of stuff, 500 pounds. No, these inhabitants have a reputation of cannibalism, basically eating men, women, children, animals, whatever. If they came across an animal, not a big deal to grab an animal while it was alive and eat it. So this is what they're coming across here. So you can't really necessarily fault them, because it wasn't, they weren't coming at it from just their perspective, like, hey, these guys look really big in our eyes, they look like giants. But it was the same perspective from the giants. Hey, look at all these tiny people. They're like lunch, basically. So there was hints of stuff going on in Job where basically the inhabitants in the book of Job, they say, was written before. It's probably one of the oldest books in the Bible. Some people say it's really, really old. I'm leaning onto the side it was probably around the time, maybe a generation or so before Abram, who's also known as Abraham. I would say it would be in that area of time. And what's interesting in Job, there's a couple of hints that men had to make pacts with giants so that they wouldn't be eaten. Like, hey, feel free to eat whatever you want in my field. Cool, just please don't eat me. And they'd make deals and all this kind of stuff. There's hints at that in Job, which is kind of interesting. So then you have the Israelites coming into a land, and it is riddled with giants. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about this, but basically, if you can imagine cities that are huge with gates, walls, all kinds of stuff, and lots of giants that are basically running the show. Now, it's the whole land doesn't have giants, but there are huge pockets of giants, meaning if you get rid of the giants, you can actually live there decently. And the original goal for God was to actually use hornets to drive these giants out of the land and most likely into Europe and to Asia. Get out of there. So they didn't have to necessarily kill all the inhabitants of Canaan, but their goal was to drive them out. And God said, if I drive out the inhabitants too fast, what's going to happen is the animals will overpopulate that land. Talking about current Israel. So instead, he was going to use hornets. But because Israel was up to no good, they ended up worshiping a golden calf, all this kind of stuff, God changed his mind and said, I'm not even going to go with you guys. In fact, I'm going to just wipe out all of Israel, and I'm going to make Moses an even mightier nation. Moses interceded and said, no, don't do that. And in fact, if you're not going to go with us, Lord, blot me out of your book. Like, I don't want to be in your book if you're not going with us. And God said to Moses that he's going to go with them, but he's going to deal with people on an individual basis, basically. So, as in, every man is responsible for his own sin. So, they approach, these 12 spies approach Canaan, and they notice these giants are probably, I would say, if I were to guess, I would say anywhere above 10 feet, as high as 20, 30 feet. And I know that maybe even higher. I know that sounds strange by today's standards, because whenever we think of giants, we think of tall, skinny basketball players with weak knees, all this kind of stuff, because their bones have been stretched out. But not so much in biblical times. Like, these giants were formidable, and they were known to be cannibalistic, meaning if there's not enough food around, they would have no problem eating human beings. How do we know this? Well, if you go through Leviticus, you'll see that God is telling Moses that, hey, the reason why we don't ask you, the Israelites, to eat animals while they're running by, and you just grab them and you start eating them, is that's what the inhabitants used to do. They used to eat each other. So God was talking about not only people, but talking about giants as well. That's why you don't eat the blood. That's what eat the blood means, is you go up to something or someone that is alive and you just start eating them. And you picture that a lot, like if you watch a zombie movie. I'm not into zombie movies, but you always see that they eat people while they're alive, and it's horrible, right? But that's what the inhabitants of Canaan would do. Hey, sis, they would eat, the inhabitants are animals. You want to talk about fresh meat, like the animals aren't even dead and they're eating them. So that was forbidden to Israel to do that to meat. That's why it was forbidden. Don't eat the blood. And this happened also right after the flood, where God told Noah and his family, basically, don't eat the blood, because the life is in the blood. So meaning, don't eat animals that are alive. And if you kill someone, then you are to be killed as well. Capital punishment. All right, so that's what the spies are facing right now. So look at this. Let's continue a little bit here. So grasshoppers. So let's go to Deuteronomy 2. And I would just want to paint a picture that there are a lot of giants in this land. This isn't just David and Goliath and his 4 other brothers. Like, we're talking about a landscape that is literally littered with giants. So let's go to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 10. All right, so this was when God was telling the Israelites not to go after the Moabites, because the Moabites ended up inheriting the land to the east side of the Jordan. And what happened was, when they moved into that area, they were encountering giants. So God helped them fight the giants. Yeah, the Moabites. You know those the wicked nation? Yes, the Moabites, who are descendants from Lot. God helped them. Why? Because they are part of the brotherly covenant. Who's part of the brotherly covenant? Well, it would be the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Edomites, and you can argue Egypt. It'd be hard-pressed to argue that one, to win that argument, but I think it's in there somewhere that Egypt is also part of it. But mostly Edom, because obviously he's a twin of Jacob, and then the Ammonites and the Moabites, they're part of the brotherly covenant, and God said that I am giving this land on this side of Jordan to them. So the Edomites had a piece of land, and coincidentally, they had to fight giants as well. So did the Ammonites. They had to fight giants. It would be nice to have a book that talks about that. We don't have those records of what the Edomites had to go through, but they had to battle giants as well. And this is what Israel was about to face. They were going into the promised land that was riddled up with giants, and it was also on the other side of the Jordan. Kind of interesting, right? So Deuteronomy 2, verse 10. So, and the Lord said unto me, this is Moses recapping the last 40 years. The Lord said unto me, distress not the Moabites, neither contend with them in battle, for I will not give thee of their land for a possession, because I have given Ar, unto the children of Lot for a possession. For a possession. The Emims, not Eminem, but Emims, dwelt there in times past, a people great and many and tall as the Anakims. So the Anakims were in Canaan. These ones, they called them, the Moabites called them Emims, which were also counted as giants, the Anakims, but the Moabites called them Emims. And the Horims, interesting, right, also dwelt in Mount Seir before time, but the children of Esau succeeded them, and when they had destroyed them before them and dwelt in their stead, so they would just take over their homes. And as Israel did unto the land of his possession, which the Lord gave unto them. Now rise up and get you over the brook. And we went over the brook. So again, I'm painting the picture that these giants that inhabited Canaan were actually scattered afterwards when Israel invaded the land, killed most of them off, but a lot of them fled. Where? Into Europe and into Asia, and who knows if they took off on boats. We don't know, or if they went down south into Africa. We don't know, but they scattered. That much we know. Which is kind of interesting because it does say in, I think it's Matthew 24, Jesus says that basically, I think it's Matthew 24, where Jesus talks about the end times being very similar, if not exactly like the days of Noah. What happened in the days of Noah? Well, they're marrying and given in marriage. And we often think of this as just people going on a honeymoon and eloping and getting married and here's my daughter, have fun, all this kind of stuff. But the marrying and given in marriage was the fallen angels finding wives that they could wed, that they could marry. And the men, the fathers, pretty much had no say, because the Nephilim, or these fallen angels, would take the women, and then they would, and they're not giants. So I think some people think that giants are actually marrying women, but they weren't giants. They were probably good-looking men. Probably they would show up, and to the women, they probably look like, wow, what nation are these men from? These hunk of men, where are they from? And if you read the book of Enoch, there were deals being made that if men would give their daughters to these fallen angels, the fallen angels would teach them science and all kinds of stuff. So it's just kind of interesting, kind of a wacky world when you think about it, because we're so used to looking at things two-dimensional, going, okay, well, yeah, if Jesus says, it'll be like the days of Noah, and we look around and go, wow, you know what, my neighbor, he actually cut his lawn a little bit too long, and maybe that's kind of like what Jesus was talking about, because we have bad neighbors. It's like, no, that's not what he's talking about. Jacob's trouble is going to be the worst time in the history of mankind for 7 years. There's not going to be a time before it. There's not going to be a time after it. What came before the flood was there were wicked people all over the world. That was pretty bad. So if Jacob's trouble is going to be worse than the days of Noah, that should give you an indicator that it's going to be horrible. This is why you don't wish that day on anybody, including your enemies. You don't do that stuff. It's just we have a basic understanding. We're like, yeah, okay, marrying, given in marriage, that's it, basic. Not understanding that perhaps what was going on was DNA was being manipulated as well. interbreeding with fallen angels, with animals, with people, all kinds of stuff. Who knows? Genetic manipulation, basically. And we see this today, that people are tampering with this kind of stuff today. So this is why I created this video, say, like, are giants among us today? Are Nephilim among us? Let me know in the comments. Do you think it is possible that Nephilim can actually live among us today? So we're going to continue. We're going to keep going with the scriptures here. Deuteronomy 3. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. Verse 11. This is dealing with the kingdom of Og, another giant. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. Behold, his bedstead, or was a bedstead of iron, is it not in Rabbath of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length of it. So if you wanted to figure that out, they say the average cubit is about from your elbow all the way to your fingertip, depending how tall you are. But that would be the average size. So this guy was 9 cubits in length. So that's, what is that, like 1.5 feet times 9. So you're talking about 13, 14, 15 feet. And 4 cubits was the breadth of it. So you're looking at about 6 feet wide after the cubit of a man. That's important. Not after the cubit of an angel, like some people think. And this land, which we possessed at that time for war, which is led by the river Arnon and half Mount, and the cities thereof I gave unto Reuben. And the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, being the kingdom of Og, I gave unto the half tribe of Manasseh. All the region of Argob and all Bashan, which was called the land of giants. So again, this place is riddled with giants. Well, okay, some people are asking questions, which is cool. Maybe I could do that in another video, but we're trying to focus on giants here. So if you have any questions based on what I'm reading or talking about, we can talk about that. So what's going on here? Just an FYI, Numbers 13, giants, Nephilim, the first and only other time used. That's interesting. Very interesting, very interesting. All right, so let's go to 1 Samuel 17. This is where we get introduced to David and Goliath. So let's have a look at how big this guy is. So this is Samuel 17, verse 4. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. So you would look at it again, 6 cubits, probably 9 feet, 10 feet tall. He had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. I don't even have to look this up to know that that was heavy. And he had a greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders, and a staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and the spear's head weighted 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him. So Malcolm Gladwell has an interesting book. I think it's called David and Goliath, I think. But he poses a theory that almost the idea would be, no, this guy was diseased. He had some kind of giantism disease, and he was blind as a bat, and that's why he had an armor bearer before him. And because he couldn't see David, he needed this guy to basically hold his hand so that he could fight David. Where are you? You know, Marco Polo, Marco. And David would say, Polo, and then he'd throw the spear at him. It's not what Malcolm Gladwell said, but I'm making up the last part of it. But it's kind of like that. Like, it's kind of like weird, right? Because clearly you can tell that Goliath was upset that Israel sent out a ruddy kid. And I think where Malcolm kind of goes off on a bunny trail, he goes, well, it's kind of weird that he had staves, plural, like these are probably walking sticks, and that's why Goliath was probably blind or whatever. So he saw David, he thought maybe he was seeing double or whatever it is. Well, I propose another theory for you, Malcolm Gladwell. What if the people back then, we'll call them Israelites, what if people back then were able to use slingshots that were not just made of leather to sling ropes, but what if, and is there any proof of this, what if they used sticks that were about 3, 4, 5 feet, 6 feet in length with a sling attached to the stick, which when they hurl it, it would be like a gunshot. It'd be like a gunshot. And you see this in the Middle East, that people actually have weapons like this, and they're very accurate. And they're like I said, like they're like 6 feet, they're like poles, and they attach the bands, the slingshots to it. And if you put a rock, the leverage that you would get from a stick that is that long, it would be equivalent to like a 22 gun or more. So imagine that sinking into someone's head. It's like a gunshot wound. Basically shot as like a Texas showdown, at the OK Corral. And basically we see David taking this guy out, goes up to him, takes off his head as well, and carries it around for a trophy all the way back to where Saul was and showed him his prize. It's kind of weird, right? Anyways, yeah, and then also David grabbed he grabbed 5 smooth stones altogether, and then 4 of them were supposed to, legend would have it that he was going to take out the other 4 brothers as well. You can debate that and say, well, if he missed, would he have time to reload, take another 4 shots? Possible. It's kind of interesting though, because I kind of lean on that side as well, that he's probably going to be going eventually after the 5 brothers. It's one you can't prove either way. Just by coincidence, Goliath had 4 more brothers. Interesting, right? So 2 Samuel 21. We're going to keep going here, and we're going to go right into the book of Revelation. So this is kind of cool. So 2 Samuel 21, 20. 2 Samuel 21. 2 Samuel 21, verse 20. And there was yet a battle in Gath, where was a man of great stature that had on every hand 6 fingers, on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number, who also was born in the giant. And when he defiled Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shemaiah, the brother of David, slew him. These 4 were born to the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. So there are others that actually take out the 4 remaining brothers of Goliath, which is kind of interesting, right? Interesting. What's your take on the Kandahar giant? Is that in Kandahar? I'm not familiar with that giant. 1 stone for each giant. Yeah, it's very possible that that's what David was doing, was getting ready to kill all of his brothers. We don't know if his brothers were there as well. Not sure. All right, continuing on. So Deuteronomy 2:20. I thought I read that, but let's just double check real quick here. Deuteronomy 2:20. Yeah, so this is Moses saying, you told me to get spies. I thought it was a good idea, so you went, but 10 of you brought back a good report. What's interesting is Caleb, after 40 years, had basically the same strength as 40 years ago. So he would have been like 80, something like that. And he had no problem. So Joshua gave him the area around Horeb, which was infested with giants. And Caleb had to take a mountain. And I think he offered it to one of his brothers. If they take over that mountain, that he would give his brother one of his daughters. And that, again, that area had a ton of giants. And that was nothing for Caleb. He's like, yeah, it's no problem. I got the same strength as what I had 40 years ago. It's interesting, right? All right, so let's go to Luke. Luke 21. This is where we get into something interesting. Oh, yeah, I was going to read Genesis. Got to read Genesis, right? Then we'll go to Luke 21. We'll try and tie this up with a nice little bow here. Genesis 6. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them, wives of all which they chose. So this looks like an abduction. You can call it an alien abduction because these were not beings from earth. These were not earthlings. They were from heaven, and these were angels that left their first estate, and they were basically, I think, as far as we know, is they're still chained underground somewhere because of this action, and they're going to get tossed into the lake of fire one day for doing this wicked thing. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Now, some people say that means it took Noah 120 years to build the ark. Some people say, no, we will not live past 120 years. Meanwhile, people after the flood were living past 120 years. So that kind of goes out the window. Like when you think about Abraham, Jacob, I think, was 130, I think, something like that. Joshua, what did he live? 110, I think. Moses was 120. I think Abraham was 175, something like that. So they lived past the flood, past 120 years. So it doesn't fit the bill if you say that people will only live to 120. Even though, like, it's pretty rare today for people to live to 120. It feels like it's more like 80, 90 years at the most. So to say 120, that's the cap, that's the max, which is what I used to believe until I came across a Levite in, I think it's like First or Second Kings, and he lived to be 137 years old. 137. So it's possible. It's possible for people to live up to 120 and past 120. So I don't think that this is meaning man is getting capped at 120. I think this is man has 120 years left before the flood was coming. So I would lean more on the side that Noah had 120 years to build the ark. Just a guess, because we do know that Noah was actually preaching quite a bit. So that's kind of interesting. Again, I'm basing it off the idea that there were tons of people after the flood that lived past 120. So that kind of cancels out the idea that man moving forward will not live past 120. When it says, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So you can wrestle with that all you want. The way I look at things, I go, what does this say? What do the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 chapters say? And we see that people are actually living past 120. So we'll leave that for now. So Luke 21:23. Oh yeah, let me just continue here. There were giants, I almost missed it. There were giants in the earth in those days, semicolon, and also after that, when the daughters of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same mighty men which were of old, men of renown. So if you read verse 4, you can look at the idea that the same thing that happened before the flood is going to happen soon. Maybe it's happening already. Don't know. What is happening? Well, these beings are impregnating women, making women pregnant. Could it be today? Maybe. Could it be after the rapture? Quite possibly. And I would lean on the side of more likely after we're out of here than right now. That's just me. But again, I'll read it again. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, meaning these giants are not extinct as we would like to think they are. Remember, these are not the fallen angels. These are the offspring of the fallen angels, because they grabbed women, married them, and then had children, and their children were giants. And there's even legend that when these giants get killed, their spirits still stay on the earth, and those spirits are actually demons. That's why they're so strong. That's why when Jesus was confronting them, he was kicking them out because they didn't belong in that area, and they were strong. They were able to break chains, all kinds of stuff, and they were able to possess people because they wanted a body. They wanted their body back. So if you think about today, if you get people messing with artificial intelligence, you get people messing with DNA, and maybe they're having people that are growing that could actually inhabit these demonic spirits, you could see how there would be giants in this day and age. Will they be the same height as back then? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe they just might be ordinary looking people, but maybe they have superior intellect, but they're Nephilim amongst us. We don't know. We don't know, because back then women were able to have babies, and then once these babies were born, they grew really big, really fast. So it didn't happen in the womb. It happened after they had these babies. And it would have been a terrible time for these women giving suck in those days. Why? Because the giants were also cannibalistic in nature. They would probably have no problem going after women to eat them in order to live, or farmers, or animals that go by. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination and thoughts of his heart was only evil continually, and it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing and the fowls of the air, and it repenteth me that I have made them. So, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. So that tells me right here that Noah was probably the only one where his DNA was not contaminated. Because if you think about it, every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was evil continually. So whatever these people were, they're not just like your neighbor that is asking you questions like, are you barbecuing today again, or whatever it is? No, these are wicked people. These are beyond anything that you can imagine. And all they did, like 24 hours a day, is they thought on how to do evil. What was that evil? Well, probably cannibalism, stealing, robbing, incest, all kinds of stuff. They're corrupting their DNA, probably mixing with animals, bestiality, all kinds of stuff going on. This is a horrible time, and this is a time that's going to happen, if not today, in the near future. We think of giants, we're like, oh yeah, there's going to be 30, 40, 50, 60-foot men walking around. It's possible. It's possible. What I'm saying, it could also be that these spirits inhabit machinery, machines, artificial life, whatever man is tampering with today, creating people that have no souls so that the Nephilim can enter into those people. You're going to have super soldiers on your hand, and they're going to look like us. And I think this would explain a little bit more of what's going on in Luke 21. Because if you think about it, there are scientists that are like, we don't know how to stop these weather patterns and all kinds of stuff. But I think there's something else going on. I think the scientists are actually worried about these super soldiers, if you will, that are Nephilim. They don't know how to conquer them. These guys know how to fight, and they're strong. And how do we know that we get a hint of this going on? Well, if we go to Luke 21, yeah, look at this here. This is in the end times here. When you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh, and let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter into, for these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. So I used to look at this verse kind of like, I feel sorry for the women in those days because they may not be able to find milk for their children when they're going from point A to point B because of this time. They're like, woe to those women. But instead, if you think about the word woe, just putting a little star in my scripture verse. If you think about it, Jesus says woe to a certain people. Let's just have a quick here. What is it? Luke, I think it's Luke 23. Luke 23? Don't think so. 23. No, it's not that. Maybe it's Matthew. Basically, he says, woe to you, scribes. Woe to you, hypocrites. So the word woe is not Jesus feeling sorry for these Pharisees. He's not saying, oh, you're such a hypocrite. I feel so sorry for you. No, this is woe, as in almost like you're doomed. You're doomed. Why? Because they're hypocrites. Their father was Satan. Why? Because they didn't believe in Jesus Christ. And they made up all these rules and all kinds of stuff, and they were actually making people more twice the devil than they were by following all these silly things. So when Jesus is saying, woe, it's almost like this is a bad thing happening to these women. Meaning what? Well, we just read in Genesis, you could say the same thing. Woe to those women that are actually marrying these fallen angels, and all of a sudden now they have these children that are giants. So this is the same context. Woe to them that are with child. This is not Jesus saying, I feel sorry for these people. This is a devastation upon the land. Wrath has come upon the land because of this. And if you tie in with what was going on in the days of Noah with this verse, all of a sudden you get a bit of a match that these women could be breeding Nephilim children. I don't think this is so crazy. I don't think this is a crazy idea. Because you'll also see in Revelation where there's an angel, I think it's after the fifth trumpet, the angel says, "Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth." Do you think he was saying, "Oh, muffin"? No, this is a judgment coming upon those that dwell on the earth. Why? Because there was 3 more trumpets coming. 3 more angels sounding off. Interesting, right? So I don't think I'm being crazy here. I don't think this is a stretch to go when Jesus is talking in verse 23, when he says, "Woe to them that are with child." I used to go, that sounds weird. It sounds like out of God's character to let women have children and then be tortured on earth because they're just nursing their children. But if you inject the idea that the church is out of here and you have wicked men all over the place that will have no problem ravaging women, and you get these beings that perhaps are coming out of the bottomless pit as well. We didn't even talk about that. There's something going on earth that is different than any other time in history. And it's not good. It's not good for the inhabitants. Because if you think about starvation, people will turn on each other. Forget about the fallen angels. Forget about the Nephilim, the women having children that are hybrids. Forget about that. Just put yourself in a scenario where it's going to be very difficult to find food. And if you hunker down and put food in your basement and you buy a bunch of weapons, there's always somebody that's going to have a bigger weapon than you and will take you out when you're not looking. And they'll take your food, and if you don't have food, you're next on the barbecue menu. That's just common sense, that's what people will do. If they're starving, they'll eat each other. They'll punish each other. They'll steal. They'll rob from each other. All kinds of stuff. It's horrible. It's horrible. So the Antichrist has to take control. How can he take control? Well, he possesses a person, most likely some kind of a hybrid person. It possesses that person, somebody that's willing. And then he has a bunch of super soldiers, probably 10 for sure, that help him out. And these guys are smart. And they know how to build weapons. Because we see this in Daniel, where the guy is focused on arms. He's making weapons, and this is his thing, if you will. It's interesting that I know I've hopped on President Zelensky quite a bit. It could be just another puppet. But it's interesting that this guy's going around asking for weapons all the time. So I picture the Antichrist as someone like that is able to convince people, that's not too bad looking, able to convince people to hand over weapons, and then meanwhile their whole nation is designing better weapons and maybe tampering with artificial intelligence, tampering with Nephilim juice, if you will, mixing DNA, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. We're not far from that. You could even say we're like right here. We're minutes. We're right at midnight. This wasn't happening hundreds of years ago. What we're seeing now, people messing with this kind of stuff. I have another theory about the mark of the beast, but I'll make that. That'll be for another video. Have an idea. There's some interesting things when you think about clocks and how they came into being. It's very fascinating. It's a fascinating study, and I hope to make a video about it. I have to do a little bit more research on it, but there's just kind of off the cuff. There is an element of control whenever you have time. If you can control time, you can control people. So I'm gonna be making a video about that. I just got to gather all my thoughts. Because when you think about it, in the book of Daniel, The Antichrist tries to change or wants to change or desires to change the times. And that's interesting. So I thought about that for a while. I'm like, So I dove down a deep rabbit hole on the history of clocks. And there's some fascinating stuff. And when you think about it, we think we're just carrying a phone around with us, but actually what we're doing is we're carrying a portable clock with us wherever we go. Why? Because somebody on the other side is controlling us, whether it's your boss, your spouse, you have places to go, people to meet, schedules to keep, all this stuff. We need our phone for time. So it's an interesting study. And I'm hoping to do a live in the next couple of weeks about that. But I think I could build a case to tie in clocks, watches, all kinds of stuff into something coming down the pipes that would fit with the mark of the beast when we're talking about the Antichrist. So don't forget, there's going to be a time in the future where we lose a third of the day and a third of the night. And if you think about it, if you were to invent a brand new watch, a brand new time system, you would have to shave off about 40 seconds almost every minute in order to lose a third of the day and a third of the night and still make it look like you're on a 12-hour or 24-hour clock. You keep everything looking the same, but you just speed it up a little bit, and then people just get used to it. Hey, yeah, it makes sense. We've now lost a third of the day and third of the night, but they need to compensate for that. So they got to figure out a new watch, a new device, and then ultimately a new calendar to fit everything. Really, you don't have to change the calendar too much, but you do have to change time. And I think that's one of the things that the Antichrist will start to do. So anyways, just something that I've been thinking about lately, right? Yeah. So hopefully you got something. That's pretty much it. I wanted to just go into Revelation 9, and then this is it. Revelation 9. This is kind of interesting here. Fifth trumpet. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven onto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. So we think, oh yeah, this is a good angel. It's a good one. He's up to good. But this could be a fallen angel. So look, I saw a star fall from heaven, and he had a key. He was given a key to the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose smoke out of the pit as the smoke of great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. Now, these aren't your little tiny locusts. These are demonic entities. There's something going on here, that they are going after men. And if you think about the concept of time, again, these guys being trapped, they have no watch. They have no wristwatch on them. So they have no idea how long they've been in this bottomless pit. So imagine them ending up in here before the flood, or by the end of the flood. They're here. Somehow they got trapped, whatever it is. In their head, they're probably stewing a little bit. Why? Because somehow they got captured and they're here in this bottomless pit. And maybe it had something to do with mankind. And they're ticked. So when they come out of this bottomless pit, for all they know, it could have been right after the flood, like immediately after the flood. They have no idea. So when they come out of this bottomless pit, they're going to be looking for markers to tell them what time they're in, because they don't know how long they've been in here. We don't know how long they've been in here. We can guess 2,000 years plus. So they're going to look for markers. What are they going to look for? They're going to look for statues that worship giants and deities as markers. Like statues that are 40, 50, 60 feet. And then when they find these statues, they can go, guys, we're home. We're home. We're back in our time. This is exactly when we left. We're home. Look around. All these people are killing babies. They're eating each other. There's starvation going on. They're dedicating these giant statues to people. Look at this. Look at that. That looks like, what is that? The Statue of Liberty? Huh. We're home. And then they just mow people down, eat them, grab women, whatever it is. It's almost like they went back in time to this time frame. They would have no idea where they are. So we're actually helping them by erect giant statues. We're basically pointing the way, saying, hey, come over here. Come to our nation. We'll worship you here. We're tampering with all kinds of DNA. They're just going to feel right at home back to the days of Noah. Interesting, right? Yeah, pyramids would probably be a marker for them too. It's like, yeah, these things are a little bit watered down, a little bit dusty. We'll buff them up. We'll get men to fix these up for us. This will just be like old days. We'll put these men to work. We're going to make them work. You think those pyramids were big? We're going to get you guys working double time, overtime. So, like, how else can you look at when Jesus says it'll be like the days of Noah? What was going on? They were riddled with giants there. People that are actually controlling everything. And they didn't think about God for a second other than to get away from him. And some of them probably invented some way to go into chambers or tunnels and hide themselves. And then they come out of this abyss, this bottomless pit. And they are ticked and they're coming after men. Which men? All the men that are not sealed. And as far as we know, there's only 144,000 people that are sealed. Could people be saved in this time frame? Possibly. I just think people are going to be running for their lives. Steady, running. They won't be staying at their home. Why? Because if you have a giant coming to your town, you're leaving. You're not sticking around. Crazy, right? And now we get these rich people that are actually building bunkers, hiding underground, hiding all their possessions. Well, you don't think the Nephilim are going to find these places and go after people that think they're safe in these bunkers? And then ultimately, do you think you can hide from the Lord when he comes back with his host, with his armies? And they're all crying out, hide us from the face, from the wrath of the Lamb? It's crazy, right? So yeah, there's lots of stuff. And I think if we read scripture at kind of a shallow level, like, oh yeah, woe to you women that are giving suck in those days, and then you just move on, you're like, well, that's kind of weird. It's probably more than meets the eye that's going on. And hopefully I was able to generate a little bit of curiosity in you to be able to dive into the scriptures so that you can have conversations like this on your YouTube channel. If you don't have one, start one. Or even with your family and just do a little Bible study and say, what's going on here? What's going on? But that's pretty much it. So hopefully you got something out of this. I'm just going to try and read some of these comments here. So silly, can't take it with you. Yep. I think there's a connection with these new cannibalistic tribes showing up in the news. How much did he leave? All of it. Yeah, exactly. There's like an old saying, you never see a U-Haul behind a hearse. It's kind of funny, right? Let's see if I could scroll the comments here. Building bunkers, pray for wisdom, increase faith, discernment, get you through. I was just going to say, there. Hey, I could even put these up. Rumors for a long time about the serpent people living underground. Yeah, that's interesting. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Wouldn't surprise me at all. You know, not that I believe in the serpent seed theory, but that guy can build a case. It's quite interesting what happened with Cain. With the idea, and I won't talk too much about it on this video, but the idea that, like Jesus even hinted, he said, like, your father is Satan. So you're like, is that just another parable, or is that just another metaphor that Jesus is throwing, or are these people coming from some descendant, like all the way back to Cain? Like, how was he born? Was he born of the devil? Because when you think about it, if you go back to Genesis where Cain and Abel were born, you only see Adam go into Eve once. He knew Eve, and then she had a son, Cain, and then she had another son, Abel, which is kind of interesting. And science will prove today that women can have two fathers. Their children can have, what am I trying to say here? A woman can have two separate babies in her womb from two different fathers. And as long as it happens within, I think it's like a week, something like that, within 7 days, that can happen. So if she's promiscuous and sleeps with a guy one night and then the next night sleeps with someone else, there is a chance that she get impregnated by both men. And the seed serpent theory is, and again, I'm not saying I believe in it fully. You can pose an argument, though, that what Eve was doing was being seduced by this fallen angel when Adam wasn't there, or maybe he was there and he was witness to it, because it looks like he was right there at the time. So that part is just, it's so bizarre, right? Because if that did happen, she took of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and then all of a sudden Adam, when they get kicked out, knows her as well. And then you have Cain that right from the get-go, he's like, I'm going to murder my brother. And Jesus said he was a murderer from the beginning, meaning the devil. And Cain wanted to murder. That's why God did not accept his sacrifice. And you could also think about it, if you think about the mark of the beast, Cain's sacrifice, again going with the seed theory, wasn't accepted because he was a hybrid. I know, it's crazy, right? That's why you come to this channel, because we go crazy sometimes. So again, not saying that I believe that, but man, that's crazy. Pieces start coming together if you start thinking about that. Then all of a sudden Cain's building cities and stuff, like right away, and he's trying to mimic the future descendants of Seth by naming his children. Cain was naming his children very similar, giving his children very similar names of what Seth was doing. Because remember, we get Enoch, we get Lamech. In Cain's lineage, we get Enoch and we get Lamech. It's just out of order. So it's almost like Cain was trying to rebuild his own lineage. Maybe trick someone to come through his lineage to corrupt that seed. Can you imagine Jesus Christ coming through that lineage, born of a virgin, coming through a corrupt lineage? This is why it was a big deal for the Israelites to try and stay away from all these other tribes and nations. Stop mixing. Most of them did not. Most of them ended up mixing their DNA with the Amorites, the Hittites, just about every nation they mixed. Even to this day, they're mixed. It's probably why it's illegal, or why they don't want anybody doing DNA testing in Israel, because it's so mixed. It's crazy, right? And if you're introducing the mark or Nephilim juice or anything, you don't want DNA samples. You don't want that, because then that's going to tell you that you're tampering with your DNA. So, and again, if you think about the realm of artificial intelligence, Israel's at the top of the list. They're at the top for trying to figure all this stuff out. Not a surprise, right? So, anyways, hopefully you guys got something out of that. What else was here? Do you think the fallen angels might, from Mount Hermon, created the dinosaurs? Yeah, I don't know what to think about the dinosaurs. I think you could build a strong case that, yeah, they were some kind of weird hybrid examples of back in the days of Noah, mixing bestiality, mixing chemicals, mixing DNA with people and animals, and then you get these weird creatures. You could say those are dinosaurs. I have no problem saying that these mysterious bones that people are finding, it's just interesting that you can find dinosaur bones from millions of years ago, but you can't find giant bones. And we know they're there. Historically, we know organizations have the giant bones, but why don't they tell us that there were giants in the land? Why don't they do that? Why do they cover that up? And yet you can go back and find dinosaur bones. It's weird, right? So I think there is something to be said. If you want to go down the bunny trail of, yeah, I believe in dinosaurs, I think that's where they came from. I don't think they were just God created them. Here's your brontosaurus. Here's your duck-billed dinosaur. Here's your T-Rex, all this kind of stuff. I think this has something to do with the days of Noah. And this is why we find this stuff all over the world. They're weird creatures. Weird. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, for sure it would. For sure it would. Because if you're figuring out how to make animals grow, they're going to look weird to us today. They're going to be like, well, what is this thing? Is it a lizard? Is this a bird? What's happening here? How come they're so massive? That would take care of the diets of the giants, for sure. I never even thought about that. So that's interesting. Thank you for that. Yeah, I get the idea, like what you're saying. Dinosaurs are all in the Bible and stuff. Like you're talking about behemoth and all that. Like we get instances of a couple of big creatures that are really, really, really huge, and Leviathan specifically. And a lot of people attribute Leviathan to mean the devil as well. The way it's written in Job, you can almost pose an argument that this sea creature comes out of the sea is the same one that comes out of the sea in Revelation, Leviathan. It's kind of interesting, right? Because he's the father, I believe that's what it says in Job, he's the father of those that lie. That's an interesting trait to have for Leviathan if you think it's just a sea creature, right? Lots of stuff going on. Lots of stuff. All right. Hey, Papa John, we're just about to sign off. Welcome. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. If you have, let me know in the comments as well. Don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow, Greg from Uptime Community Church and I are going to do a study on artificial intelligence and the metaverse. I almost thought Greg told me in an email, hey, let's talk about the multiverse. I almost got excited there. It's like, what? But no, metaverse. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence and all that kind of stuff. So that should be fun. Should be a fun time. And then I'm trying to get Robert Breaker on again in the future to be able to do a bit more of an encore presentation on the pre-tribulation rapture, because I think we only scratched the surface. I'm talking about dispensationalism. So we started scratching the surface on that, and that's quite fascinating. So I hope to have him on again, but he's tied up this Sunday. I think they're going shooting or something like that to a gun range. So anyways, I've done some of that myself with some buddies, some friends. It's a fun time. Anyways, and then this Sunday night I'll probably be doing another pre-tribulation rapture study, the differences between pre and post and all this kind of stuff. Just may not be with Robert Breaker this week, but that being said, there is an interest that he wants to come back on my channel and then spend a little bit more time unpacking it. So it might be like a marathon. Maybe we'll go 2-3 hours. Who knows? Anyways, I hope you guys have had a good time, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and feel free to leave a comment. Feel free to watch this video again and let me know in the comments, do you think something I said was a little bit cray-cray? Am I on to something? Does it make sense to you? You can also email me. Let me see if I can put this email. Hang on here. Apologize for my fingers here. Let's see here. I'll put this up. If you want to be a guest on my channel, you can email me. What else do we have? Do I have another email? Nope. This is harder than it looks. Let's go here. If you have questions, there you go. Email me here. Oh no, that's if you want to be a guest. Yeah, if you want to be a guest, email me at blackswanpodrequests@gmail. If you have questions, then you could just email me at blackswandiary2022. And if there's something that you want me to talk about in a video, or if you want me to go deeper on something, let me know that. What else? You're watching the Black Swan Network. Let's see here. Oh yeah, check out this. Check out Uptime Community Church. Let me see if I can close this other banner. Oh man, they're all going all over the place now. Now I can't turn them off. Boom, there we go. Let's see here. Shane. Huh, I haven't heard that one for a while. Let's see here. See if I can turn this off. Nope. Where's that ticker anyway? I don't know where that ticker. Oh, there it is. There it is. Comments. Dink. All right. Hey, this is kind of fun doing this on the phone. It's kind of crazy. All right, that's it. I am going to sign off, and I'm going to have some salad for lunch because you know I like salads. Have a good day. I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.